Hey, welcome back to my Iron Man build. This is a kit build by Fanhome, which is a magazine subscription you subscribe to. Each week you get a different part of Iron Man. This time around we'll be covering parts 7, 8 and 9, which is the assembly of the right forearm, and then connecting into the elbow joints that we made earlier in part 6. Okay, so let's make a start. Let's get the parts out for part 7. These are all the parts that came with part 7 magazine. And there's not a great deal of them, to be honest with you. Nice aluminium part here, which is going to be the forearm, then some just additional plastic parts to give some trimming, and just 2 bags of screws. So as before, I really need to give you a tip here to just get the screws to hand. If you fold the bags over like I've just done there, they'll be much easier to access when you really need them. And you will also need the elbow joint as well, which is built during parts 5 and 6. Make sure you check out my video above for those, because we'll be attaching these parts to the elbow joints later on. So the first step is just to simply grab the forearm and the forearm plate and press the two together. And this can only go one way round. There's a couple of little lugs here, which I'm just pointing out. 3 of them, and then there's 3 corresponding holes. So just put it in and it should be a firm clip. Make sure you're careful with the front of it. See, I'll just adjust it there, slide it underneath, and then it will clip down and secure. There's no screws to this part, it is just held in with those lugs, and that's more than sufficient. And then the only stage that's left on this assembly is to grab the forearm top, which is part 7C, and then that just interlocks into the forearm that was made. Make sure you get the right way around. It can only fit one way round, like so. Nice snug fit. And then this will be held together with a screw, which is a BP screw. So there's 2 types of screws in this part of the build, but we want the BP screw. It just goes underneath into the center hole there. So make sure you use the magnetic screwdriver that come with the kit, and just simply slot it into place like so. And there we go. As before, don't over tighten it. Don't really want to do that. You'll strip out the thread on the other side. And it's a nice snug fit. It does all look like aluminium, but of course some of it is plastic. The spray job is exceptionally good. Then now we go on to the final stage of part 7, which is bringing the forearm joint together, which is bringing the forearm and the elbow joint that we made earlier on in parts 5 and 6. Now these 2 can only interlock one way round. I'll just show you. There's a square in the elbow joint which goes over the peg in the forearm joint, like so. It won't stay there by itself. It will need 2 screws, which I'll add shortly. Just really showing you a little bit closer here. You see the lugs and the square, and then just slide it on over the top. And then we'll take 2 screws, which are the DM screws. These have like a built-in washer, which is handy when it goes over the square peg. Just keep it locked in. Okay, make sure that these are nice and tight and secure. So in goes the first one, and then let's just grab the second one as well. And then thread that in. Like so. And there we go. The elbow joint is now attached to the first part of the forearm. Obviously there's part of the forearm missing, but we'll follow up shortly with that, which will be the very next part, which I think we'll move on to now. Okay, so part 8, this is also magazine 8. It also just has a handful of parts, which we'll just get out now. First of all, starting off with the different screws, which I'll cover later. And then moving on to really the other half of the right forearm and the wrist joint as well. So same 2 parts as before, but the extra parts we have here are for the wrist joint. 2 bits of plastic and also a rubber grommet. So part 8, stage 1, pretty straightforward again. Right forearm, just putting two pieces together like we've already done. And then we move on to the wrist joint. So first off, the gold part can only attach one way round, like we've shown there, because of the lug. It just clips into place, but it is held in with a screw this time round. So it's a BP screw, which put in on the reverse. So let's get that secured. Like so. And then let's move on to the wrist joint. Now the wrist joint is made up of 3 parts. We did make the hand, if you recall, in an earlier build, which I'll link above. But here's the wrist joint, just 3 plastic parts. Apologies, this is slightly off screen and I'll slot it in. But the ball link just goes into the base of the plastic part. It goes either way around, so to be honest with you, it is symmetrical. But as you can see, the screw can only go one way round. And the screw we're going to be using is the JP screw. Again, don't worry if you have leftover screws. Fanhome do like to supply you with multiple screws, spare screws, which I think is a good idea, because some of them are particularly small and do get a bit fiddly. But to tighten this right up, don't worry too much about over tightening this one. We will want the other hand to move on the wrist joint, but just make sure it's fairly tight so that you can pose the model later on. So I'm just going to nip mine up a little bit more. And then you have the soft rubber cover which just slides over the top. Now if you notice there, one side is thinner than the other side, so just make sure that marries up as per the base, like I've just done there, because the base is longer on one side, showing the right hand picture here compared to the left hand. And then that's just going to slot into the forearm assembly that we have here. Not the way around I'm showing you here, make sure you get it in this way around. And it just slots in nicely. To show you that one more time. Like so. Let's move on to stage 2 of part 8, which is simply bringing the forearm outer and the forearm inner together and hold them together with 4 screws. Now this will slot together pretty nicely. It will almost clip into place, as you can see. Makes a nice join. And then the 4 screws we need to use are the EM screws and the holes that I've just pointed out. So always start off with screwing in the opposite corners. Let's get the first one into place. And there's the second going in. Third, and then finally we'll do the 4th. Just checking that the rubber grommet can still move there for the wrist joint that we added earlier. And there's the 4th one, done up tight. And don't worry about the fact we can see those screws, we'll cover those up later on. I did just quickly notice though I wasn't quite down tight enough to still cover the turns there. And there we go, the 2 halves are now together, and as you can see the elbow joint is working, we can flex it, the forearm's moving nicely. It's not too loose, which is great. It's fairly tight. So let's move on to part 9, magazine 9, and first of all let's have a quick look at the parts. So again, just a couple of parts. We have the right forearm cover, the right elbow guard, and 2 elbow covers, which I'm showing at the moment. So this will hide those screws that we showed earlier on. So let's retrieve the right arm that we've made so far, and first off we're going to put the cover, the right forearm cover, on place. Just held in by 3 lugs, no screws, because we're obviously going to cover up the screws. and it just clips in really nicely and firmly, and that's it. Job done, it's on. Nice and easy. As you can see, it's looking pretty good at this stage. And then finally, we need to move on to stage 2 of part 9 build, which is just adding the elbow guard. Now these elbow guards have 2 caps, which are the covers, which go on. Notice they have got R1, so they're marked. So one side of the guard is marked R1, so the cap can only go one way round. You want to get the R1 cap onto the R1 side, like so, and it just clips into place. And same on the other side, called R2 and R2, again, just clips into place. And there we go. Just locating those lugs. Be careful, don't push too hard and snap the lugs. Make sure they are lined up with the holes first before you push harder down. So the last step is to bring the 2 parts together. This will finish off this stage. So bring the elbow cover onto the elbow joint. When you put it together, you obviously push the 2 squares together, square peg and square hole. Make sure the covers here are lined up like I'm pointing out. And that's how you know you've got the right way around. It will fit the other way around, but that will be wrong. And there we go. That is the finished parts. Hey, thanks for joining me this time around. If you liked the video, please feel free to subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to hit the bell icon as well so you get notifications on my new videos. And also check out some of my other playlists such as 3D printing, cars, drones, aircraft, etc. Take care, see you next time.